Today we're diving into one of the most famous thought experiments in all of physics, Schrödinger's cat. But we're not just going to talk about quantum mechanics, we're going to ask a question that Erwin Schrödinger himself may have never even considered. Was his cat enlightened? Now I know what you're thinking, how can a hypothetical cat in a box have anything to do with Buddhist enlightenment? Well, stick with me, because this thought experiment illustrates something profound about the very nature of reality and our own potential for awakening. And as we'll see, sometimes the most absurd sounding scenarios contain the deepest truths. Welcome back to Quantum Awareness, where we explore the fascinating intersection of quantum mechanics, neuroscience, and Buddhist philosophy. I'm QP, your quantum preceptor. But before we dive in, if what we explore here resonates with you, a follow and a like costs absolutely nothing, and it tells the universe that you'd like more of this. And I'd be grateful. So let's start with the basics and the context. In 1935, Erwin Schrödinger created this thought experiment to illustrate what he saw was the absurdity of applying the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics to everyday objects. And this is critical to understand. He wasn't trying to show that quantum mechanics was wrong. He was trying to show that something was incomplete, or perhaps misunderstood, and how we were interpreting what happens at a quantum level. So here's exactly how it works. You place a cat in a closed steel box. Inside that box, there's a deadly poison that stands ready to be released by a Geiger counter and a radioactive atom that decays at an unknown rate. The Geiger counter is set up so that if it detects radiation from the atom's decay, it triggers the release of the poison, killing the cat. If the atom hasn't decayed, the cat lives. At any time during the experiment, in classical terms, the cat is either dead or alive. Pretty straightforward, right? There's nothing mysterious about it from a common sense perspective. Either the atom has decayed and the cat is dead, or it hasn't and the cat is alive. We just don't know until we open the box. But here's where quantum mechanics really gets weird. According to the Copenhagen interpretation, until we open that box and observe the situation, we cannot know the status of the cat. But it goes further than that. The quantum state of the atom, decayed or not decayed, remains in superposition. It exists in both states simultaneously. And if we take this interpretation seriously and apply it to the entire system, the cat exists in a superposition of states, both alive and dead at the same time. Only when we observe does the wave function collapse into one definite state. Schrödinger created this to show how ridiculous it would be to apply quantum mechanical principles to macroscopic objects like cats. He was essentially saying, look how stupid this is. Obviously a cat can't be both alive and dead at the same time. So there must be something wrong with our interpretation. But here's the beautiful irony. Sometimes the genius of a thought experiment goes well beyond the original creator's intention. What Schrödinger meant as a reductio ad absurdum, proof by contradiction, actually opens up profound insights when we look at it from a different angle. And this is where it gets interesting from a Buddhist perspective. What can we learn from Schrödinger's cat that applies to Buddhist practice? And the answer is profound. So, spoiler alert, we're already enlightened and we just don't know it yet. We haven't been able to observe it properly. We exist in a state of unknowing or ignorance about our own true nature. Now, many Buddhist teachers explain that enlightenment is closer to us than our skin. Not somewhere far away, not something we need to achieve in some distant future, not something that requires years of painful ascetic practice or retreat in a cave. It can happen right here, right now, this very moment. This understanding stems from the teaching that we all have Buddha nature, that we all have the potential to be a Buddha. Some traditions even go further and say we don't just have the potential, we already are Buddha. We just don't recognize it. Think about that for a moment. The historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, was a man. He was born, he lived, he experienced suffering. He sought answers and he found them. If he could realize enlightenment, then so can we. We all share the same fundamental nature. The difference isn't in our essence, it's in our recognition of what we already are. And this is not some mystical hand waving. This is pointing directly at something you can verify for yourself. The Buddha himself said not to believe anything he taught simply because the Buddha said it, but to test it, to examine it, and to see if it's true in your own experience. We're like Schrödinger's cat, existing in a state of superposition, until we begin to observe, until we look deep inside with meditation and learn to see ourselves as the perfect, beautiful beings that we already are. We remain in quantum uncertainty. Are we enlightened? Are we not? The answer, paradoxically, is both. Until we learn to look properly. We need to look inside the box of our minds with trust and purposeful dedication. We need to see that what we are is nothing short of amazing. But this isn't about positive affirmations or building up our ego. This is about seeing clearly, without the distortions of our habitual patterns, neuroses, and conceptual overlays. Here's the thing. We need to learn to think inside the box long before we begin to think outside of the box. And most of us have this reverse process. And we fail miserably at whatever it is we're trying to achieve simply because we're approaching it backwards. We live in a culture that celebrates thinking outside the box. We're told to be innovative, creative, and different. And those things are very valuable. But what good is thinking outside of the box if we don't even know what's inside the box? What good is trying to transcend our limitations if we haven't even properly examined what those limitations actually are? So think about it this way. Do we try to teach someone something we cannot do ourselves? Do we advise on relationships when our own are in chaos? Do we lecture others on meditation when we can barely sit still for 5 minutes? Most of us are putting the cart in front of the horse. Can we be of good use to others when we are suffering in an uncontrollable way ourselves? Or can we be of best use to all beings when we are in a position of surplus and wisdom, when we've actually done the work and looked inside the box and discovered what's there? And this is why the Buddhist path emphasizes self-knowledge first. Not in a selfish way, but in a practical way. You simply can't share what you don't have. You can't guide others through territory you haven't explored yourself. And this is what we call the wisdom of experience. A well-composed meditation practice shows us our natural beauty and the divine essence that we have had since beginningless time. Now, I use the term divine carefully here, and not in the sense of something separate from us, some external God, but in the sense of our fundamental luminous nature. The Tibetan tradition speaks of the clear light nature of mind. Different words, the same pointing. But unfortunately, due to our own ignorance, we've learned to forget it. We've covered it over with layers and layers of conceptual thinking, habitual patterns, and mistaken beliefs about who and what we are. We've built an entire identity, an entire sense of self, based on these obscurations. And we defend it. We defend our own confusion because it's familiar, because it's what we know. Let's therefore learn to be fully alive, whether we are in Schrödinger's box or not. It's really a choice that we must make, to either wallow in our own sorrow, or to remain identified with our suffering and sad stories, or to choose to realize our full potential for the benefit of all beings. Now, there's something else crucial about Schrödinger's cat experiment that relates to meditation practice, and that's the role of the observer. In quantum mechanics, we have this puzzling phenomena where observation seems to affect the system being observed. The wave function collapses upon measurement, and we've talked about this before, and it's led to all sorts of interpretations and debates. Does consciousness really collapse? Is observation a physical interaction? What exactly is going on? So from a Buddhist perspective, particularly in the Vajrayana tradition that I practice, there's a teaching about the co-emergence of subject, object, and action. These three don't exist independently. They arise together, interdependently. There's no observer without something being observed, and no observed without an observer. And there certainly is no observing going on with either of the other two. Did you catch that? When we sit in meditation, we begin to notice this directly. We notice the thoughts arising, We notice the awareness that knows the thoughts that are there. But if we look closely, where's the boundary between the knower, the knowing, and the thing known? Where does the observer end, and the observed and the observing begin? Now, this is not just philosophical speculation. This is something you can investigate right now, in this very moment. Notice that you're reading or hearing the words. Notice the awareness that knows you're doing this. Now, where exactly is that awareness? What is that which is aware? Can you find it? Does it have a location in space? Does it have a color, a shape, or a texture? And yet it's undeniably here. You're undeniably aware. The awareness is closer to you than your own breath. And yet when you try to grasp it, it's nowhere to be found. In any given moment, in any given situation, anything is possible. This is what superposition teaches us when we apply it to our own lives. And it's not some magical thinking, but in recognizing that the future is genuinely open, undetermined. Superposition gives us a gateway to understanding our unlimited potential, what we see, how we see it, and what we receive. And here's where free will comes in. We can really choose to see a comedy or a tragedy, and that's completely up to us. Now, I want to be careful here, because this isn't just positive thinking or trying to put a happy face on difficult situations. Life includes genuine suffering. The Buddha's first noble truth is that there is suffering. He didn't deny it, he pointed directly at it. The question here is, how do we relate to it? This is about fundamentally recognizing that our perception shapes our reality, not in some magical law of attraction way, where thinking positive thoughts makes good things happen. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the very real sense that how we relate to our experience determines whether we suffer or find freedom. Two people can go through the exact same objective situation and have completely different experiences of it based on how they perceive it, how they relate to it, and what stories they tell themselves about it. This isn't theory. This is observable fact. And meditation gives us the chance to develop this skill, not only on the meditation on the cushion, but perhaps more importantly in daily life. The cushion's the training. Life is where it really counts. When we sit in meditation, we're learning to observe without grasping and without pushing away. We're learning to see things as they actually are, not as we wish they were or fear they might be. We're opening the box and looking directly at what's there. And what do we find when we look? Sometimes we find pain. Sometimes we find fear. Sometimes we find joy. And sometimes we find nothing in particular. But what we always find, if we look closely enough, is the awareness itself, the space in which all of these experiences arises and passes away. That awareness, that's what doesn't change. That's what's always been there. That's Buddha nature. That's the enlightened state we're looking for, hiding in plain sight. So just like in quantum mechanics, where the act of observation collapses the wave function into a definite state, our awareness in meditation allows us to recognize what has always been present. We're not creating enlightenment, we're discovering it. And this is a crucial distinction that cannot be overstated. Buddhist enlightenment isn't about becoming something new. It's not about achieving a state you don't currently possess. And it's not about adding something to what you are. It's about removing the obscurations that prevent you from seeing what you already are. So it's like having dust on a mirror. The mirror's reflective quality doesn't just go away because there's a little bit of dust on it. The capacity to reflect is intrinsic to the mirror's nature. It's what a mirror is. Clean the dust away, and that reflective quality naturally shines forth. You didn't create the reflectivity by cleaning the mirror. You revealed it. And in the same way, our Buddha nature, our enlightened nature, is intrinsic to what we are. It's not something we gain through meditation. It's something we uncover. The meditation practice is the cleaning cloth, not the mirror itself. Life is the purification, not the mirror itself. The Tibetan tradition has a beautiful teaching about this called ground, path, and fruition. The ground is the Buddha nature, what we already are. The path is the practice, this process of recognizing what we already are. And the fruition is the full recognition of what was always the case. And the fruition isn't any different from the ground. We don't end up somewhere different from where we started. We end up recognizing where we've been all along, seeing, feeling, and knowing more clearly and completely. And that's why some teachers say that enlightenment is their greatest disappointment. Not because it's not wonderful, it's got to be, but because you realize there was never anything to achieve, nowhere to go, nothing to attain. You've been looking for your glasses while they were on your head the whole time. And there's another aspect of quantum mechanics that's relevant here, the relationship between probability and certainty. Before we observe the cat, quantum mechanics gives us probabilities. There's a certain probability that the atom has decayed, and a certain probability that it hasn't. The probabilities are described by the wave function, which evolves deterministically according to Schrödinger's equation. But when we measure, when we observe, we get a definite result. The probabilities collapse into certainty. In our meditation practice, we often live in a similar state of probability. We think maybe we can be happy, maybe we can find peace, maybe enlightenment's possible. These are probabilities, possibilities, potentials. We haven't actually looked yet. But when we truly practice, when we truly look inside the box of our mind with sincere dedication, these probabilities begin to collapse into certainty. And not an intellectual certainty, experiential certainty, direct knowing. And this is what the Buddha meant by come and see, not come and believe, or come and hope. Come and see for yourself, direct perception and immediate knowing. And this is available to everyone, not just special people, not just for monks, and not just for those who've meditated for decades. Everyone. Because everyone has the same fundamental nature. Everyone's already the cat in the box. Already in superposition, somewhere between confusion and enlightenment, and ignorance and wisdom. So, was Schrödinger's cat enlightened? Yeah, but the cat didn't realize it. Meow! Much like us. The cat in the box exists in all possible states until observed, and we exist in the state of potential enlightenment until we learn to observe ourselves clearly. The observation doesn't create the state, it reveals what was always true. Enlightenment isn't somewhere else, it's not in the future, it's not dependent on achieving some special state of consciousness, or having any mystical experiences. It's not about seeing lights or having visions or developing supernatural powers. It's right here, right now, in the very nature of awareness itself. The question isn't whether we can become enlightened. We already are, in our essential nature. The question is, will we recognize what we already are? This recognition isn't just a mental event. It's not just understanding this conceptually. And I can talk about this all day, and you can understand every word, and that's not it. That's still in the box of concepts, the box of ideas. The recognition happens when the conceptual mind relaxes, when we stop trying so hard to figure everything out, when we stop defending our position, our identity, our story of who we think we are. It happens in the gaps, the spaces between the thoughts. It happens in the space of not knowing and not thinking. And paradoxically, this is the most natural thing in the world. It's more natural than breathing, because it's what we already are. So let's choose to be amazing, not in an egoic, self-aggrandizing way. Not in a way that says I'm better than all the others, or I'm special, because that's just more dust on the mirror. That's just another story, another identity to maintain and to defend. Let's choose to be amazing and recognize our true nature, the nature that we share with all the other beings. The nature that has been obscured but never destroyed. The nature that can't be destroyed because it's what we fundamentally are. The nature that quantum mechanics, in its strange way, points towards when it shows us that possibilities exist in superposition until the moment of observation, that until we look, truly look, everything remains open. Every moment is a choice. Every moment we can choose to see clearly or to remain in confusion. And every moment we choose to recognize our potential or to remain lost in the story of limitation. The box is open. We just need to look. And the beautiful thing is once you start looking, and I really mean really looking, and not with just your conceptual mind, but with awareness itself, you begin to see that you're not alone in that box. Every being, every sentient creature shares this fundamental nature. We're all Schrödinger's cat. We're all in superposition, somewhere between confusion and clarity, between freedom and suffering. And when we recognize our own nature, we begin to recognize it in others too. You begin to see that their anger, their fear, their confusion, it's all just dust on the mirror. And underneath that same clear light shines in all of us. This is why Buddhist practice isn't ultimately about liberation. It's about recognizing our interconnection, our interbeing, our fundamental non-separation. It's about developing compassion, not pity, not the genuine wish for all beings to recognize their own nature, to find their own freedom. So the cat's in the box, existing in superposition. And we've seen how that mirrors to our own potential for awakening. But here's what I keep coming back to. If observation collapses possibility into reality, then every choice we make, every action we take, is a kind of observation, a collapse, a cause. Which makes me wonder, what happens to those causes? Do they just disappear? Or does the universe, like a very patient physicist, keep perfect score? If this episode found you at the right moment, please share it with someone else who might need it. And if you haven't followed yet, please do. It's the most effortless act of generosity you can offer this work, and it genuinely matters. Next time on Quantum Awareness, we step out of the quantum realm for a moment and we visit the very different kind of genius. A man who never meditated a day in his life. Well, as far as we know. Sir Isaac Newton. Because it turns out his third law of motion might be the most elegant description of karma ever written by someone who wasn't trying to do it. For every action, an equal and opposite reaction. The physics are airtight. But does the same law hold when the force in question is cruelty or kindness? Let's find out. This is QP. Sound is emptiness. Emptiness is sound. Observation collapses infinite possibility into singular beauty, revealing what was already here. Cat you next time.
Meow.